Hi everyone, Anthony Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it is time for a review of the new Black MIDI album, Schlagenheim. This is the debut full-length album of rough trade signees, UK-based rock outfit Black MIDI, named after a dense computer-crashing form of electronic music composition that is usually packed with thousands, if not millions, of notes. The band Black MIDI doesn't really sound like what they've named themselves after, at least aesthetically anyway. I guess in a conceptual sense, they are both similarly freakish and disorienting, but I think that's where the parallels start and end. I first heard Black MIDI earlier this year, around in February, when I stumbled across somehow their Speedway single on YouTube, which is a much rougher version than the song the band presents here on this new album. Even though the performance and the recording on this early version of the song wasn't picture perfect, you could say that most of the elements that make Black MIDI what they are now were pretty much in place, as the band was still delivering eerie, mathematical noise rock with an emphasis on strange grooves and even stranger vocal performances. I do want to say though, even though Black MIDI is pretty weird, I mean they've got an odd sound, a lot of what they're doing in my view isn't entirely unprecedented. Personally, I hear quite a bit of crossover between them and contemporaries that tend to favor funkier, more outlandish music, favor experimental rock, noise rock, math rock, post-punk, early music from Alt-J, Aught, Parquet Courts, Preoccupations, and Women. There are some moments where the guitar tones remind me of something off of a television record. So to me, even though Black MIDI has quite a few familiar qualities, they have definitely hit upon a uniquely unsettling, dark, and a bizarre sound. Take the blistering multi-phased intro to this thing,
9:53,
which features these odd, quickly cycling grooves that are broken up with shots of noise and guitar feedback. And it says a lot that the band can suddenly transition from this into a pretty beautiful acoustic guitar passage with very theatrical lead vocals. Onward, we get more instrumental build-ups, instrumental freakouts featuring melting guitars and falling pianos. The whole thing devolves into a punked-out riff fest toward the very end and just becomes absolutely demented. Miraculously, in this one track, in this one moment in the intro, the band successfully balances all of these sounds and emotions and intensity and volume levels in a way that just is very cohesive. Then we have the song Speedway. The groove on this one inhabits a place where it is very visceral. I really feel it. I really want to move to it, but there's something that feels just inhuman about it, and subtly sinister as well. In a way, the track's odd lyrical focus on building codes and urban structures kind of reminds me of something out of a Talking Heads song. It's like maybe the band is trying to make some kind of statement about the sterility of urban living or conformity or the rat race and hustle and bustle of city life. Or maybe it's a rigid sonic depiction of rigid architectural structures. Either way, it's intriguing, and I absolutely love the instrumental swell toward the end of the track. By comparison, the next track, Reggae, is a lot more wild, out of control, lively as well. There is absolutely nothing reserved about this song. Not only the contorting guitar licks, but also the xylophone on this track. What sounds like xylophone is just so over the top. The singing on this one feels less like singing and more like a very tense and dramatic rant. It's like, once again, I'm listening to the band Aught, but with a much more manic lead singer and zanier instrumental backdrop. Or maybe it's like a math rock band attempting to soundtrack a horror film. We then have the even noisier Near Detroit, Michigan, where the incredibly hard-hitting, jagged riffs that kick that track off give way pretty quickly to these somber musical passages. It's very murky, it's very atmospheric, and the reason the instrumentation is scaled back on this part is because I think the band really wants the listener to focus on the lyrics, as they present a very on-the-nose description of the various water crises going on in the Great Lakes state right now. There is a totally insane finish on this track where you're essentially met with these scream vocals of, "There's lead in the water! There's lead in the water!" Undeniably a powerful and maybe the most nightmarish moment on the entire record. I think the song Western, at least in the first leg, is this album's first genuine attempt at trying to do a ballad. The guitar and melody kicking the track off feels like something out of an Americana tune, but given that it is Black MIDI, of course it's not going to stay in this tuneful and mellow place. Sonically, I would say it progresses into a pretty surreal place with a lot of lyrics, I think, trying to give the listener an abstract depiction of a protagonist essentially cutting off a toxic relationship or connection to someone by, I don't know, leaving them in a ditch. Lyrically, the whole thing gets more and more unhinged as it progresses, with the verses feeling like they're right out of a fever dream. "A pink caterpillar with 6 anorexic children let me stay, but I had to keep moving through Anteater Town. After Anteater Town, after Anteater Town, after Anteater Town, after Anteater Town." It's, definitely twisted. The mutant rhythms and noise and distortion on the track of Schlagenheim feels like something out of the 80s no-wave scene, but of course that only accounts for some portions of this track. All the other passages surrounding these moments just move through this indescribable winding progression. I'm looking at a list of things I picked up on this track, and I know it's all real. I know it happened, but it's still odd to think that there were passages on this thing that felt like they were out of a jazz fusion or a prog track, and then there was this groove toward the end of the song that felt like it was out of an 80s boogie banger. If you threw a sweet synth lick on this portion, it might feel like a synth funk song, of course with a weird twisted backdrop to it, but still. The song BMBMBM is maybe the most grotesque moment on the entire record. It features all these weird horror movie screams going on in the background with just manic ranting on top. "She moves with a purpose. What a magnificent purpose. Purpose!" It's easily one of the least tuneful and most repetitive moments on the entire record, as well as one of the simplest structurally, and yet it's like one of the most impactful moments on the entire album. The central idea to this song is so freaky, and just how far they push it is certainly awe-inspiring. The band goes full spazzy noise rock on the track Years Ago, which is another refreshing moment on the album, I guess. And the finishing track, Ductor, is a somewhat satisfying closer, though I don't think the band really does anything on this track that they hadn't already presented in some way, shape, or form earlier on the album. I wouldn't say it's the most grand moment of finality that I've heard on a rock record this year. I will say, to throw a few nitpicks in there, occasionally the production to my ears does feel a little claustrophobic, like the riffs and the bass and the drums, everything could just use a bit more space. Some of the musical detours that the band embarks on in these winding, detour-heavy tracks sometimes feel like non sequiturs, or they derail the momentum of a particular song, but I guess the band always loops back into something interesting. So even if they do transition into a somewhat underwhelming moment, it doesn't last long. The vocals occasionally, I think, could use a bit more direction. Sure, I do like the lack of inhibitions on the vocal front of this record. It does lead to this album having a lot of character, feeling a little freaky and a little out there. But their disheveled nature and lack of direction occasionally can be a little frustrating and standoffish. Not to mention they can feel obnoxious during moments where they're a bit overacted. Overall, though, I think this album is a great listen. I love it. I'm incredibly impressed with the band's creativity and cohesion, and just how bold their sounds and ideas are right out of the gate. So not only is Black MIDI sounding incredibly good right now, but I don't know, I feel like with a band that is coming through with ideas this bold and out there, and songs this compelling, the sky could be the limit. And that's maybe the most exciting thing about Black MIDI at this point. I'm feeling a decent 2 strong 8 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up, or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Black MIDI, Schlagenheim, forever.